Recording in
always,
progress.
our first order of business is open forum or any announcements. Christina. I'm sorry, before we jump there, Stephanie, you're taking minutes, correct?
I am.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. Thank you.
On paper while the computer reboots.
Okay. Okay. Christina.
So I just wanted to alert everybody, the Finance Committee on Thursday is going to be starting a discussion about the mailing of the FinCom books. It's just a discussion to figure out what people are thinking as far as, do we want to continue mailing a copy to every household or not? And I thought this group might have some input on that topic. So I just wanted to make you aware of it. Nothing will be decided on Thursday. It's simply to start a conversation to find out, like I said, kind of what's going on. It would need to go to town meeting anyway, because it's a bylaw change. So that was it. And if you can't make the meeting on Thursday and want to just send your thoughts, feel free.
Christine, you want to give a brief summary as to what the options?
Sure. So it will depend on what the Finance Committee, how the discussion goes. But what I'm thinking is we're still going to create the FinCom book. There will be a Finance Committee book with all of the information in it. We just option number one is we don't mail them to every household, but we will mail some sort of one pager, something with the date, the time, the location, kind of all the pertinent information where you can find your Finance Committee book online, and paper copies around town, town hall, Cameron Senior Center, things like that. What were the other options that I discussed with you, Diane? We were also toying last time we discussed this with not just a one-page mail out, but maybe a 5-page mailer. So it wouldn't be the full, it's actually an 80-page book. It would be something a little bit smaller. But again, just wanted to make you guys aware of that, since you're sort of thinking about how to get people to town meeting. Do you think that would be okay? Would it really not be good communication wise? The cons are more just about the fact that we send out almost 9,000 of them, and we get, as you all know, maybe 400 people showing up. Money wise, it's maybe in the $5,000 range that it would save us. So while it is something for a $130 million budget, I'm kind of like back and forth with it. It's a little bit of a drop in the bucket if people are really feeling strongly that the full thing should go to everyone in town. So
the meeting is Thursday night.
Thursday. Yep. It starts at 7:00. I think that is like the second item on the agenda. So maybe 7:30.
So people can register at the Agenda Center if they choose, to listen in. And I'm sure we'll hear, Christina, from you regarding how the discussion went and what
And like I said, if anybody wants to talk to me about it ahead of time, if you can't make the meeting, please send me your input, because I value you guys. We're kind of in the thick of it. So I would like to hear input.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Anything to share? Any events that are going on while we have you on the phone? Angela.
I guess I would just like to know if anybody here has an opinion they want to express about that. I also value this group's opinion and would be curious to know what folks think about the balance between the cost and the paper and the idea of not having it.
Tom, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, my opinion, I think, would be to at least send out a one-page document with some kind of a minimal, high-level explanation of the budget. but also be very clear that people can find the rest of it if they're interested at this link. I think that anybody that's going to go to the town meeting and is interested in understanding the finances, will appreciate that, at least that one-page document and a way to find it.
Yeah, that would be at a minimum. That has to go, I think, to every household. And like I said, there would be printed copies available around town if somebody just wanted to go and pick one up, because to print that out yourself, that's huge if you wanted a paper copy.
Right.
And there would still be printed copies available for people at town meeting?
Most likely, yes. Yeah, I don't see why not.
And I totally agree with Tom. I think that's the wise way to go.
Anybody else want to express any thoughts?
Well, as long as there's a digital copy available, I don't mind saving the paper and getting one page instead of 80.
Right.
I'm in agreement as well.
Okay, great. Thank you all. I appreciate that.
Good. Okay, any other announcements? Anything else for open forum? If not, we'll close open forum. And we'll move on to approving the minutes. And I didn't even hear back from anybody because I put the wrong date when I wrote the date in the agenda for the minutes. I don't know if anybody caught that. I had December 16th, and apparently the minutes were dated December 13th. But in any event, were there any questions about the minutes? Thank you, Tom, for putting those together.
No problem. I think they were excellent.
Julie noted. I think we all agree. Thank you. Any other comments or discussion about the minutes? If
Dana
not,
has her hand up. Dana has her hand up.
I'm sorry.
Just one minor note. I think I noticed that Christina's name was spelled incorrectly in the attendees. And I know someone caught my name spelled incorrectly the first meeting. So
Yes.
That was the only thing I noted.
Didn't even see that. Thank you, Dana.
Yeah, it is spelled incorrectly.
That's
Sorry,
why it
Christina.
really is good to have other sets of eyes on these for us all, right? So, it does work out. Valerie.
Yeah, just when the discussion under the working group for the community input resident survey, I thought it was a good capture of the discussion, but I was hoping to add a line to indicate that sort of the consensus led to not doing the mailing, just so that's sort of recorded to capture that sort of fork in the road that we had last month.
Valerie,
Does that
I'm
make
sorry,
sense?
where was that in the minutes?
So it's under like the group I report out about, the Westford Community Input Working Group.
Okay.
And we talked about like how to sort of roll out the survey. And we had a discussion as a group about whether or not to do the $600 mailing. And my recollection is that a consensus was to not do that and to try to do sort of online and physical locations instead. And so I think the discussion is captured well. I just wanted that sort of decision point recorded.
Okay.
Okay, good. So Tom, can you resend that back out to me?
I can. Valerie, would you send me just a one line that I can add to that?
Sure.
Okay. And then I'll send it back out to you, Diane.
Right, and we'll fix Christina's name.
Yeah, I noticed I spelled Christina's name correctly in other places, like under the Community Data Collection Working Group.
Valerie, could you include me too? And I'll put the same wording in my minutes.
Okay, let's take a, based on the recommended changes, do I have a motion to approve the minutes based on the recommended changes?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
And Christina, thank you. Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Steve,
Aye.
Dana,
Aye.
Valerie?
Aye.
Megan has not yet joined us. Okay, Stephanie?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Sally?
Aye.
Christina?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And myself is an aye. I think I got everybody? Okay, thank you. So approved based on the recommendations that will update and add that additional comment as well as Christina's name. Okay. Okay, moving on to updates from the working groups. And we'll pass on, everyone saw Megan's logo. So she did a great job on the logo. We should utilize that. I think I need to better understand from a technology perspective, it's a PDF and I don't have Adobe Editor. So do I need Adobe Editor, Valerie or someone, in order to use the logo? Because it wouldn't let me play around with it and insert it.
When I used it on the survey materials, I opened it. I don't have Adobe either. And I opened it and did a screenshot using my computer operating software.
Right, and that's what I ended up doing to capture just one of the images when I did posting in Facebook and somewhere else. But I was also told it didn't come out as clear. Sarah told me that, Steve, as a matter of fact, that the logo was really fuzzy, and I assumed that was why.
So,
yeah, that would probably be a resolution issue. There are also a lot of converters online that like PDF to JPEG converter, and you just upload your PDF and it'll give you a JPEG to save.
Okay, I think in the past I've used it, but haven't. And they're free? Is that, Steve?
Yeah, most of them. The good. If you find one that asks you to pay, find another one.
Right. Well, I think Adobe's the only one that asks you to pay, right? The rest of them probably are free. Okay, that sounds good.
And just as a short-term fix, I just zoomed in all the way to fill my screen, right? Because then you're sort of getting a better graphic to capture. It doesn't mean you have to leave it that big, right? But then at least you're starting with a number of pixels, I guess.
Okay. Angela.
When Megan gets here, we should also ask her, she might be able to provide it in some different formats that'll be easier for people to use since she's the creator. She might be able to, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think part of it was so that we wouldn't all tweak it and add to it, potentially change it. And so there's a benefit to having a PDF, but yes. So we should make use of the logo. It's a great logo. It's kind of fun. I think it portrays very nicely the image that, town meeting stands for. So if we have an opportunity to use it, go for it. If you're posting things, if you're writing emails, attach it, or copy and paste it, whatever you need to do. So thank you to Megan. She's not here, but thank you to Megan for all her work. Okay, Tom, you're on Remote Participation Working Group.
Okay. We're a group of three with all different schedules, so we have not been able to meet since the last meeting, but we have emailed back and forth. And I sent Diane a summary of our work to date that was intended by the group so that she could use it in the February, I assume the February select board meeting when you do a presentation to update the select board.
Do you want to share your screen, Tom, and bring that up? Or does that get too complicated here?
You're giving me too much credit on how to do that.
You could talk through it.
Diane, you have it. You could do that, right? If you want.
Yeah, it's buried now. So Tom sent it to me about an hour ago. So
yeah.
So blind leading the blind here, but it's buried somewhere at this point. So you could just talk through it.
Yeah, let me just talk through it briefly. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but Basically, I put down that our group, which consists of Eric Babamingo, Steve Edwards, and myself, started on October 18th, and we try to meet once a month. The overall purpose of the work group is to research various methods of electronic access to town meeting for remote participation of Westford residents, as well as other potential methods of participating in and voting on town meeting warrant articles. We will address allowing remote participants the ability to speak at town meeting with questions or comments. And then I have a list of about, I don't know, maybe 10 things that we've done, I call them actions to date. And I'll just quickly run down these. Basically, we're populating a Google Docs spreadsheet so that the three of us can go back and forth on ideas that we've come up with during the month. We're researching the potential of a ballot form of voting on warrant articles, as well as voting for elected officials on the same ballot. This is successful in some towns. We're doing research on, I should say Eric is doing research on what laws, practices, procedures would need to change to meet our goals. There is some data from other towns to help with this effort. We discussed the security of electronic voting. For example, token-based electronic security, NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Thank you, Steve. And possible resistance by residents. We agreed that open town meeting is preferable to a town meeting representative form of government. It's preferred that all residents have the ability to express their opinions and questions during town meetings. We support the use of clickers at town meeting. We've offered assistance to Angela, who is leading that effort in researching the clicker use. We're also reviewing, it's a report from the Mass Moderators Association called the 2040 Town Meeting of the Future for other research. There's a lot of really interesting data in that, Angela. So we're looking at that. It was agreed that the technology advancements will allow inclusivity for the disabled, elderly, and parents with children who can find it difficult to physically attend town meeting. So we believe that what we're attempting to do will help a lot of people in the town of Westford. However, it's our consensus that due to the complexity of the electronic remote participation process, including the legal requirements from the federal and state governments and the complexities of residents' comfort level, recommendations from our group will not be available in the short term. This is going to be a longer term process requiring extensive research and preparation. So that's where we are to date. I can actually send this summary out to the group when I get out of the screen that I'm in. And then if you have any questions, or if you have any questions now, Steve and I are here to answer any of them.
So Tom had written that not as a simple, update, but rather trying to capture the essence in preparation for giving an update to the select board. So that's the context.
Correct.
Of the Word document he sent out to me. So questions right now. Sally?
Have you guys reached out to any elected officials in the state, since so much of what you're doing will require changes like to the state constitution, or possibly even on the Westford side? But, a lot of what you're suggesting will require changes at the state level. Are there any elected officials who are working on this already?
I guess Eric probably could have answered that better than I could. He is aware that there are state and federal laws that will need to be changed. And some of those laws and procedures were changed on a temporary basis to handle meetings even town meetings during COVID. The town of Reading, Lexington, Salem, New Hampshire, there's a bunch of towns that took advantage of that during COVID. But I think, Steve, you may remember, I think that ends, I don't know, March or April of this year.
April 1st.
I'm sorry?
April 1st.
April 1st. So, yeah, so we need to do more research on that, see what aspects of the laws we would need to change on a permanent basis, and then go from there. So we will have to get involved with some of the state elected officials.
Steve?
Well, and just to add to that, the changing the state laws is a pretty daunting task. And so one of the things that I'm looking into is the use of a home rule petition, and whether we can use that to just change those laws for us without having to necessarily get the whole state on board.
Sounds as if it may be a lot easier.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Any
And
other
it's worked well for some of the other towns that have actually used it. So there is some experience with remote access, including voting and the participants from home being able to ask questions. But it's just tough to get all of the information and get your head around it.
Thank you, Tom. Any other comments? I can blast that out after the meeting, Tom. I can do that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sorry I didn't have it up.
No,
That's fine.
if I had thought about that ahead of time, I probably would have known how to do it.
Yeah. Any other comments on remote at this time?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I add one thing? And this just came up today between Angela and I. Angela has sent me some information on the town of Sharon, Mass. And she's put me in touch with Rob Carver, who is on a committee similar to what all of us are on for the town of Sharon. Sharon is somewhat similar to Westford. I think they have about 18 to 20,000 people and, similar number of schools. And it's a very similar makeup to Westford. So that information just went out today from Angela to Rob. And so he'll be contacting me and he's very interested in the town of, he doesn't know it's the town of Salem, New Hampshire, but Salem actually does 2 information sessions, one in late January and one in early February on a Saturday, where they give anybody that wants any information on what's coming up on the ballot. They can call in on the link, ask questions, whatever. So they educate the town residents. And then the ballot, I believe, is in, I forget when it is, March something. And on that ballot, they not only elect their officials, but they vote on every warrant article. I think there were like 20 warrant articles in 2021. And so they do all the elections and the warrant articles on your same ballot. And you have a date, it might be March 9th or something, that you have to go to your polling place and do your ballot. So very interesting, the form of voting.
So they combine their town meeting with elections.
They combine the election of town officials with all of the warrant articles.
Right.
So they, instead of having a formal town meeting, they have information sessions in January and February on all, say, 20 articles. And they spend several hours, at each meeting answering questions and opinions and comments. And then you just go on March 9th, I think it is, and you vote.
Interesting.
So at any rate, yeah, we'll be talking to him.
Angela.
I actually meant to bring Rob up during open forum and I forgot. This gentleman, Rob Carver from Sharon, contacted me because he had seen the survey. Isn't that great?
Oh.
And he is on a committee exactly like this, and Sharon is fairly similar to Westford demographically and economically. And he was very enthusiastic about everything that we're doing and wanting to know everything we're doing and telling me everything that they're doing. And you know, it certainly makes sense to communicate with people like that who are in no sense recreating the wheel. I mean, if we've done something that they're interested in and they've done something we're interested in, we may as well compare notes and get things like that done. So I, as Tom said, I put him in touch with Tom to talk specifically about the technology part of our of what's going on this committee. But I suspect there'll be other things as we go on. He was very interested.
Is he a town official? Is he a town?
He's a member of that committee.
Just a voting member.
Just a member of their committee, which I think he said has 9 people on it. And their moderator is not on the committee, I don't think she goes to the meetings, but other town officials on it, very similar to this. I think he said there was somebody from FinCon on it, and just various, a wide group, people who do go to town meeting, people who don't go to town meeting, people who've lived there a long time, people who are relatively new. So it just sounded so similar to what we were doing. He kept saying, you guys are ahead of us, but I don't think we are. I think we're right about the same place as they are.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That's great.
Yeah, it is great.
Christina.
So I just did a quick look at our responses and I don't see Sharon. So if anybody talks to Rob Carver, ask him.
No, sorry.
Oh,
no.
He's not the moderator though, correct? Yeah,
He's not the moderator. He was talking about our town, the other survey.
Yeah.
That's the one he was.
Oh, the town. Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. What is the other one called, Valerie? What are we calling it?
I think it's called, or it's labeled somewhere as Thoughts on Town Meeting.
Thoughts on Town Meeting. Yeah, that's the one he saw. And that he got all excited about that. And he loved it because it was short and came right to the point. And he thought everybody was going to take it. And yeah, so.
Excellent. Excellent.
He may have questions on that. Can I send him your way, Valerie? Okay.
Yes.
Let's leverage what's out there, I think is what Angela is saying. Let's not reinvent the wheel. If someone is already doing it, then we can modify it to our needs, right?
Right.
Excellent. Great. Megan, you're on. We jumped and we spoke about your logo and want to thank you profusely. Great, we're very pleased. And some of us have been doing a cut and paste of it because it's a PDF. And the question was, should we just get a Word version of it, or how can we more easily use it? Or is cutting and pasting, or, what do you suggest?
No, I'll send an email to everybody with appropriate individual versions, JPEGs or EPS files or whatever we're using it for. I just, I'm sorry, I didn't do that ahead of time. I guess I was waiting for this meeting, even though we've already used it, for everyone to kind of give it the official blessing and say like, yes, I'm okay with this. And I understand that like, these are the logo versions. And then that second page was sort of all the additional graphic elements, if you will, that kind of felt like they were coming from the same place. So everybody can use them however they'd like, and all of that. But I will follow this up with sending out individual files that are more user friendly.
I think I used it the same day you sent it to me. So
oh, good.
I thought it was great. I didn't wait, but I did a cut and JPEG, create file. So
I apologize that it took so long to get there. And the one that, I don't know if you already talked about this, but the one where we can modify it to have wording underneath it, whether that's Westford or something else. If anything comes up where somebody thinks, oh, I need this to say, Diane and I had talked offline about what that was. And I said, maybe, there's a use for that when we want to add a date for something important related to it, or maybe whatever it is. But if anybody has a thought about a version that they would like or think could be useful for something, then by all means.
I think it's
email
great to
me.
have that flexibility. If we have an event or want to call
Right.
out an event, right? Or something, whatever it may be.
Right.
So,
It could say vote or don't complain.
yeah, right.
You know, whatever we want to say. Come or keep your mouth shut.
Right. Right. Any reaction, Steve?
Not to that, but just to go back to what Tom was saying a few minutes ago. When I first came into this, kind of my big focus was on the electronic voting side of things. And admittedly, like that's a really complex issue that's kind of like way off in the distance. But the more I learn about using a ballot to decide town meeting articles, the more I like that idea. And I've kind of pivoted a little bit to that being kind of my favorite path forward. Not only because it's not so far off in the future, but it seems like it has kind of a great cultural implication for kind of getting people involved. And Angela shared, I forget which town was doing it, but it was a town in this area, maybe Andover, North Andover, that was had their ballot election a month after their meeting. And that whole month becomes like a campaign for anybody who has an item on the warrant can then go out and try to convince people to go vote yes on their article. And that way, kind of the community is trying to drive engagement to the polls and not just the boards and committees.
Excellent.
Just
Angela.
one more thing on that, because I was talking with some members of the Board of Registrars about the new, we're going to have a new polling place, not a new polling place, a new
precinct.
Thank you, a new precinct. And so they're trying to figure out how to redo the precincts and who's going to be where. And it looks like they're putting forward an idea of having only two precincts with two polling places with several precincts in each of the two. And one of the things they're thinking about is generating more community discussion meeting because everybody's sort of going to the same place or just two places instead of 5 or 6 places. And that Steve kind of fits in with what you're saying about, more discussion, more back and forth. I mean, even if it is the day you go to vote, if you see a lot of people there, you may very well have more discussion of what's going on.
Excellent. And that recommendation goes before Select Board tomorrow night for those of you who hadn't seen the agenda, narrowing it down to the Academy and Stony Brook. And it's a recommendation at this point, and we'll see what the discussion is. Excellent. Okay, so we're good on logos, Megan, right? So thank you. That it looks great, I think, so we should make use of it. As much as we can. Okay, Christina, community data collection from working group from other towns.
So our survey went out to all of the moderators in the Mass Moderators Association. Thank you, Angela. About the first week of January. So far, we've gotten 20 responses. There are over like 250 open town meeting towns. So, it's a little less than 10%. And our group is planning a meeting for sometime next week to really kind of dive in and see what those responses are telling us, if anything. I think we need a little time to sort of analyze it and see what they're telling us. The responses have slowed down. So my guess is, maybe we'll get a few more trickling in, but I don't know how many more we should expect.
Angela, would it be worthwhile to do something like a reminder to MMA or yes, moderators?
I was thinking what I could do is contact Rebecca Townsend. She's the president of the association, and that's who we had to go through to get this okayed and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And just send her an email and say, we've only had 20 responses. Is there some way we can give everybody a reminder? It can't come directly from me, but
Yeah.
it can go through her definitely. And I think she might do that. So I'll give that a try tomorrow.
Okay, great. That would be great.
I know you asked me how many moderators it went to, but obviously you found out. So
well, I just looked through one of the spreadsheets that you had given us and basically counted. I just counted how many towns there were.
Yeah, I'll try and touch base with her again tomorrow.
Because that is
great. Thank
with
you.
everything, that burst of energy that everybody responds to, similar to the survey, and then it fades, right? So that's why the consistent reminders for everything we do, would be good. Anything else? Any other questions for Christina? Okay, moving on to our survey. Valerie.
I threw a couple things together in slides, so I'm going to share my screen if that's okay.
Great.
If you don't have your screen maximized, it might be a good idea. So here's our thoughts on town meeting survey update for tonight's meeting. It went live on January 12th. For online methods, it was posted in a couple of Facebook groups. It was included in the town manager newsletter. It was posted as a news alert on the Westford ma.gov website. There are 3 physical locations around town, one at the town clerk window, one at the J.V. Fletcher Library, and as pictured, they just knocked it out of the park. This is like right as you walk into the Cameron Senior Center with this separate table and pens and a clipboard. And they just did a great job setting it up. So it's been out there for about 12 days. We have received 482 online responses and 12 physical copy responses. I didn't capture here, but there are flyers posted, in Market Basket, Muffins on Main, Post Office, and a few other places sort of around town. So instead of I can certainly, if people have questions, I can certainly pull up the actual Google form. Does a good job of kind of giving you a very basic overview of the data, but and I can't even see my own screen because of this bar, but basically the top chart is showing how often, whether someone attends or not. And so that's everyone that fills it out online is filling out that very first question. So I think it's helpful that we're hearing from a good distribution of residents who do and do not attend. So never is 32%. People who never attend are the green bucket, and they're still filling out our survey. Almost always and sometimes are the blue and the red, and then rarely attend is the yellow. And I can't see anybody, so if anyone's raising their hands, please jump in. And then just to refresh everyone's memory, it went from, do you attend town meeting or special town meeting? And if you chose always, almost always, or sometimes, you were threaded to a question that said, what makes attending challenging? And if you answered, I rarely or never attend, it was a question called, worded as, what makes attending impossible? But actually the answers were pretty much the same for both. The top 2 answers far and away were both conflicts with other events and activities and length of meeting. Under the what makes it challenging for the people who almost always or sometimes, we also added an answer that said it is not challenging for me, and that got a fair amount of responses based on, not surprisingly, based on the people who are almost always and attending. And then for the other thread for what makes it impossible, childcare came up as sort of the third most chosen answer, and work conflicts. There was also a question after you answered that. We asked sort of how are you getting your information either about town meeting or about town events and topics. And I should also mention that both of these questions were multiple choice. So you could choose as many sort of as you want and select all that apply, right? So the communication ones really got a good spread of a variety of different sources between local news, Facebook, word of mouth, not so much school communications, but town communications, town mailings, Christina for their finance committee book, yard signs, and the outdoor banner.
Valerie, can I just jump in for 1 second and,
Sure.
and make a comment? I think it's fine. I know we're not diving into the results that we got from our MMA survey, but I find it interesting that the #1 response of conflicts with other events and activities sort of coincides with the fact that, yes, we only got 20 responses, but very, very few have their meetings on Saturdays. The majority were on a Monday night. So I find it interesting that here, where we're on a Saturday and conflicts with other events seem to overlap.
We got hundreds of, there was also spaces on most of these questions for write-in responses. And we got hundreds of mentions of basically, I'm not going to give up my precious Saturday to sit there for an undetermined amount of time for something for like one thing that I may or may not care about, sort of. So that was definitely a theme.
Interesting.
Any other questions on this preliminary slide?
If I could just make one comment.
Yeah.
The school communications that got so few responses, I sort of don't think we really do a lot of communicating about town meeting through the schools at this point in time. So that may be why that's so low.
Yep. And once upon a time, I used to be able to dive into pivot charts, and I have that muscle memory for me has atrophied over the last 6 to 9 years. So I would be interested though to see if that answer coincides with the age breakdown. Like if we're getting, obviously, certain ages are not even subscribed to school communication. So I'm not necessarily surprised at that being low. Okay, so nope, there we go. The other big question when we talked about the survey as a working group was, who are we hearing from, right? Are we hearing the same several loud voices? Are we hearing from people from kind of the current attendee demographic breakdown? Are we hearing from the people who aren't attending? So we did include a bunch of demographic questions at the end, all of which included prefer not to say as an opt-out so that someone wouldn't feel like they had to answer. So I don't know if this text is too small for you, so I'll read some of these out loud. The biggest bucket for age we're hearing from is the 35 to 59-year-olds breakdown. This purple magenta color is 60 to 74. This teal blue is 75 plus. And for gender, overwhelmingly female and about a quarter male. I'm pretty sure the purple there is prefer not to say. But I tried to squeeze it all on one slide, so I had to cut something. And then for race and ethnicity, the purple is white or Caucasian. The green is prefer not to say. And then this blue, I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but this blue underneath that green is Asian or Pacific Islander. And I want to say it's like 5%. Yeah, that looks right, like half of that green. So then I went to the Westford census data to see if that matches our current makeup. And according to, I think it was census.gov or whatever, we're categorized as 19.8% Asian. So we are certainly missing that a good chunk of voice there.
Valerie, it's Megan again. I mean, I find this so interesting because this is like pie charts that show who responded to the survey, not pie charts that show who comes to our meetings.
Yeah.
You know, like sure, middle-aged women respond to surveys.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, yeah, check the box, I did it.
And I think, you know, just so that we were using this data sort of with a grain of salt, right? To say like, who are we hearing from, you know, not to jump if, I don't know. It just felt like a good sanity check to me to try to collect that information in addition to, you know, the messages that they're telling us.
No, I think they're great questions. I just hope that if we were to get a bigger snapshot, that it would more truly reflect what the meetings look like more than their survey respondents.
So I think I mean, I don't know what your guess of what our meeting demographics are, but I don't know that I see 70% female in the audience, right? So I don't necessarily want to hear from just the people that attend though, right? Like we want to make sure that we're hearing from the people who can't attend too. And I don't, you know, I think we can all agree that maybe 35 to 59 may not be as well represented in current attendees either. So, so we looked at this data as a working group this weekend. And again, I may have mentioned it, but there's, you know, hundreds of sort of write-in requests. Dana went through that data looking for sort of any helpful themes. I don't have that list handy, Dana, if you want to chime in of some helpful things you saw in there. Do you have that handy, Dana? Sorry.
Yep, I do. One thing that was mentioned a handful of times was the idea, and I don't know if this would actually even be possible, but it was interesting, of having a day devoted to the introduction and discussion of the warrants and having anybody being allowed to ask their questions then, and then having a separate day just for voting. So that way you could potentially separate out the people who, you know, have comments, have questions, they could do that. It could be recorded, people could marinate over it. And then the voting piece of it would be something a lot quicker on a different day. Again, I have no idea if that's even legally allowed, but there were quite a few people who made that suggestion. A couple other things, somebody suggested a podcast that I wasn't sure. That seemed kind of interesting to me. Just, Angela, I don't know if that would be something that you would want to do, and just have various town board members, anyone who's sponsoring an article or an amendment, they could come and they could discuss it. And just have this ongoing discussion. It's just another way to advertise either what goes on at town meeting or the various things that will be voted on. So there was somebody who was new to town and had moved from an area that does not do town meetings, and they were wishing that they had information about what it was. So the thought was, is there a way to get like a new resident packet out to people? I feel like, and maybe Christina, maybe you, I don't know, maybe if you can answer, but I feel like when I moved here in 2018, I got something from like the recycling information right when I moved in. And I don't know if that's because I was new or if it just happened to coincide with when the information went out.
Yeah, so the recycling guide, I'm sorry, the recycling guide goes out every July to every household. So that may have just been the timing.
July, so that was just the timing. But I was trying to think, you know, is there a mailer that goes out routinely to all residences, that like a flyer about town meeting? So if you were new to the area, you could read that one paper thing, or Valerie, you had another idea with realtors if you wanted to share that.
Well, just like if we had something sort of designed about like, welcome to Westford, here's our form of government, select board meets blah, 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 and town meeting usually happens this time, and sort of have them distributed to our local realtor offices. And certainly that doesn't capture everyone, right? Because if you're moving from sort of far away, you may have used a realtor closer to you, but at least we would try to capture some people that are using Westford realtors.
The League of Women Voters had their guide to town meeting. And I remember going to the realtors, this was several years ago now, and dropping them off with that same premise that it's a good opportunity for them to pass out new information for potential people moving to town or for people who definitely bought the house.
At the very least, we should be giving something like that to people when they register to vote. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. I don't know why we don't do that.
There is something town clerk's office does pass out, but I don't know what it's called, Angela, right now.
I'll talk to Patty and see what it is. Maybe it's time for a redesign. It's probably the same thing we've been handing out for 50 years.
Could be, but I'm pretty sure they actually have something they hand out. It may be more broad in this is town meeting as well as all the other services in town. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but worth, checking into.
Christina
have
Christina. Yeah.
So years ago, I know the Recycling Commission put in like a page or so to a new resident guide, and I'll have to go find it on the website because there was something on the Westford website, but whether it had open town meeting described in there, I do not remember. I think it might have been more like, this is how to find your trash day, and here's how to register your dog, and all of that kind of stuff. But Patty would probably know, and maybe we could update that to add in this kind of information that either goes to the realtors to get handed out, or maybe is plastered on the front page of the town website so you can find it, something like along those lines.
I'm actually using Westford Neighbors at the Historical Society, and we're sending out cards to new house owners. And this is something we've been doing since I've been director. And I'd be happy to throw a flyer or some kind of information in that card that I'm sending out. Just a suggestion.
It's a card?
Yeah, it's just like, welcome to the neighborhood. Come and visit us at the Historical Society. Yeah. Just a greeting card. Yeah.
Okay.
We could put together a sort of a one-page thing. There's probably a lot of places where we could get it, like the Rodenbush book, the rec book, the senior center newsletter. I mean, I feel like those places would put something like that in on a regular basis. Or if not, we can sort of twist their arm to get them to do it. Do people think that, I mean, it's a lot of different ways of hitting people maybe that might work, and certainly the town website. And
I could speak to Rodenbush and say they would definitely do it. They posted the survey and had it in their newsletter also to parents. So I know they're more than willing to partner and help the cause, for example.
And the last thing that kind of stood out to me, which I feel like is basically what this committee is doing, but someone suggested setting up a Friends of Town meeting that would advocate for attendance and raise funds for any kind of mailing that would need to go out to advertise either the meeting itself or what's going to be on the agenda. Which again, that basically sounds like what we're tasked with and what we could be tasked with long term. But I don't know, just aside from the obvious, people wanting different voting options, virtual ballots, and a shorter meeting, those were just a few things that kind of jumped out at me as some interesting ideas and something that we could potentially see happening going forward.
So thank you. Oh, go ahead, Sally. Do you want to add something before I pivot us?
Yeah, the surprising thing that I saw in the comments on both the people who often or always attend and never attend was how many people want town meeting to go away. You know, there's mentions of it being antiquated. On both, no matter who was filling it out, there were a number of comments about just get rid of town meeting. So I was surprised how much of that kind of feeling was coming through in both the people who attend and don't attend.
Thanks, Sally. So just so we sort of stay on schedule, I just wanted to pivot to our next steps. So there's certainly a lot more data to dig into or can be looked at. This was just something I quickly threw together. And when we met as a working group, we talked about, you know, I know the drive-through survey brought in over 1,500 responses, and right now we're kind of creeping up to 500. We didn't have a specific sort of goal response to aim for. And so once, you know, we're just kind of talking about what sort of energy to put into a like a refresh of pushing it out again. And anything like sort of targeted outreach as far as any groups that we thought were missing in the demographics, like students, or trying to connect with our Asian population in town. We also reflected as a working group that we hadn't really sort of put enough emphasis maybe on like peer-to-peer, like text your friends this link. And that maybe that could help bring in a couple more especially if you think of a friend who doesn't, you know, would see this somewhere else. And then we also talked about potentially putting the message to find the survey on the town website on a sandwich board on the common for a little while, and trying to capture the people who wouldn't see this on Facebook and are missing this in other places. Obviously, the downside is that they have to see the message, remember the message, type in the website, and then fill it out. But it would help maybe catch some of the people who are falling through the cracks. So I guess that's what we're kind of looking for tonight, is if the full committee had input on sort of whether we think there's, you know, a good amount of data here to go with and to dig in and analyze for ideas and recommendations, or whether to kind of invest some more energy and try to get some more responses back. So we'd love to hear from.
Valerie and I had spoken earlier. Maybe it was yesterday, and I ended up, and maybe it was a discussion with Christina, I'm not sure now. And I sent out an email. I went through my contact list. So from a personal perspective, I just wrote, you know, hi guys, looking for information, you know, looking to promote the survey. I know it only takes 5 minutes. Many of you come anyway, but your input is important. Can you please take 5 minutes and fill it out? And I did a first batch of 30, and I'll do another batch tomorrow. And that took 3 or 4 minutes to do. So if we all individually did that, that may be not a lot of effort involved, action that we could all do.
You're just reminding me too that a lot of elected officials sort of keep email lists, you know, through the campaign process. So maybe that's a direct ask to sitting officials to try to think of it that way instead of, I mean, I think we had asked sort of for Jody to share with boards and committees to announce during their public forums. Yeah. But maybe it's a more targeted ask to say, you know, please use your email networks to send this out. And Steve has his hand.
Steve.
I like that idea of going through the politicians and getting them to leverage their networks. But to what Sally was saying a little bit earlier about the number of people who just want to get rid of town meeting, I think it's important for us to acknowledge that town meeting isn't really working as intended, and to not shy away from that fact, because I've heard that same sentiment a lot. And it's, when you think about it, like, if we're only getting 300-400 people showing up to town meeting, that's 1% to 2% of the population that's making decisions for everybody. And you know, that's not what town meeting was supposed to be for. It was supposed to be more inclusive. And so, like, I really see our mission as trying to modernize it for the 21st century so that we don't have to get rid of it, because there are so many things that are great about town meeting. It's just that we as a society have kind of moved on to a different way of doing things, and our institutions haven't necessarily kept up. So that's and to some of the responses that we got about why do people not come to town meeting, I think a lot of those issues are things that could be solved by something like a ballot town meeting, where you have the meeting and finalize the warrant, and the people who are interested in being part of the discussion can show up to that. But then a month or a couple weeks later, have that ballot election and give people a chance to come and vote on their own time. You know, watch the meeting when they can, rather than having a set time on a Saturday afternoon that, like, if you're not available at this time, then too bad, you missed it. I think whatever we can do to create flexibility in this process is going to be able to address some of those problems that people have started articulating.
You just reminded me too, one last thought I wanted to add on to the end was that something that sort of dawned on me when we were discussing the results was our ceiling is not going to be as high as the drive-through survey, right? Like, that was a very emotional and contentious thing that people couldn't wait to, like, kind of jump on and click the answers to. And I think it's almost a data point in and of itself that the results for this are reflecting sort of the apathy and the kind of the indifference that most people have to thinking about town meeting. So
I'll jump in right now because I'm going to share my screen. If I could bring it over. I took our initial meeting on the first session, and now I can't drag it over here. The first session that we had, and put it into categories of the bullet points. And I'm having challenges once again with this. So what I took is the brainstorming session that we did during the first or second session, and just put them into general categories. And one of the biggest categories there was education, and the second one was communication. So if you're lumping in the kind of general terms, but a lot of the input based on our own committee input could be put into those categories. A lot of educating needs to be done. A lot of communication needs to be done. There were others that were odd responses that didn't neatly fit into a category, but many of them fell into the voter community not understanding and not being educated enough, or not being communicated enough. So I don't know if that's going to resonate with the survey regarding needing more education and needing more communication, or our goals, but that was our own input at the time, which I thought was interesting. So we're back to your initial question, Valerie, about next steps, right? So what does the committee think about, which I think is Valerie's question, at what point do we start formal analysis? We have what, 482 right now, 482? It's been out there since the 12th. Angela.
So I feel like if we give it one more push, you might get maybe another 200 responses. I think that would be good if you could. I know I apologize. I was really tied up with stuff until about a week ago. And I know Diane had asked me to do a PSA, which I didn't do. If you decide you're going to go forward and try to get more responses, I'll do that tomorrow. And Steve, could we do that and get something up pretty quickly if I did that? Yeah. And sending something out to your own email lists always works great because it's so personal. You're asking people you know to do this. Just before we got on tonight, I sent something to a couple of people just asking them to post, and I saw that Beth Perkins posted it on all the Westford pages again. So, you know, even though it was posted a few weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago, once it's posted again, it comes to the top of everybody's list again. I'm acting like I know what I'm talking about. I don't, but it seems like that's what actually happens. So if I feel like we could give it one more push and get, I don't think 450 is anything to you know, knock. That's a pretty good response to a survey like this. We're not talking about who's going to be the next president of the United States. I mean, this is what keeps you from going to town meeting. It's a pretty tame issue. So 450 responses is pretty good to begin with. But of course, the more you get, the better it's going to be.
Dana.
My feeling.
Tom, could you remind us how long the drive-through survey was live before you guys took it down and started your analysis?
Yeah, we actually didn't have that much time. I'm very impressed with the 482. The drive-through situation was a very heated issue on both sides.
Right.
So when that first came out, I mean, I don't think we had that available to respond to for maybe, I don't know, 3 weeks. And it was coming up pretty quick. So we were right at the tail end, and we got, I think it was just under 1,700, 1,694 or something.
But in addition, that came after several weeks of discussion on the planning board, where those hearings were being broadcast, a lot of discussion online amongst people on the various Facebook pages and stuff. That's it. We don't have that. We don't have that built-in publicity. We really just have to make our own.
I think there were several articles in the Westford Eagle, or Eagle Independent, or whatever we call it today. There might have even been something in the Lowell Sun, I'm not sure. But it did have a lot of publicity. It was a very constricted time period, you know, where people were either going to respond or they weren't, you know, where attendance at town meeting, I mean, the next town meeting isn't until June. So, you know, it's not a hot issue.
Right.
It's an important issue to us, but it's not a hot issue to the residents right now. So I'm impressed with the response of 482 already.
I'm wondering if it's something that, whatever, we set a time now for, you know, how long we want to keep it up, and then push it out again when town meeting is closer. Maybe people have kind of discounted it right now because it's so far out. Maybe people would be more likely to take it if it was closer, when they could like look at their calendars and be like, well, here's why I'm not going, kind of thing. So something we could potentially roll out again a certain time before town meeting.
Mm-hmm. Any other input on that? Christina.
I agree with Angela. I think, you know, one more push, maybe give it another week to 10 days, and then go and, you know, do more analyzing and see what you can make of it. For now, we can always, I like the idea of pushing it out again, maybe closer to town meeting when people might actually be thinking about it. It might be interesting to see what they say. And the personal connection. I'm gonna send out an email as well to people I know.
In going through the list, I was trying since we have many kindred spirits and we all share kindred spirits, I was trying to avoid those people who I knew would have already filled it out, and just go through. But the personal approach does work, I think. Linda.
Yeah. Valerie, you said you did a flyer to put around. Is there any possibility you could maybe do a new one and put a QR code on it, and people could just scan the QR code and go directly to, I don't know if that's possible, but go directly to the survey on their phone?
Yep, it's got one on there.
It does? Okay.
Right.
I didn't see the flyer.
Sorry. I thought I attached it to the full committee, but maybe not.
Yeah, I probably did.
It's
bright pink one at Market Basket when you walk in the door, bright pink, so you can hold up your phone and
yeah. And if
Millworks
anyone
is
has
another good place to put it.
Okay, I was just going to say, if anyone had specific ideas, I've got neon paper and I'm happy to print some more and can deliver them wherever. We just kind of plateaued on ideas of where, I think.
Yeah. Millworks is one of my favorite places to put historical society flyers, and that's always a good variety of demographics coming through there.
Steve?
I live at the Princeton Princeton Westford Apartments, and there's like 200 units over here. So if I got 5 flyers, I could go around and put one next to every door on the entrances to all the buildings. And we get a pretty good mix of demographics around here. A lot of younger families, a lot of Indian families. So I think this would be a good area to do some canvassing.
Steve, is that mostly Chelmsford, or is that a good split of Westford and Chelmsford?
We're right on the border with Chelmsford, but we are entirely in Westford. So I think it should be all Westford voters.
Okay. Megan.
Val, did you ask the principals if they would be willing to put it in the bottom of their weekly newsletters? Did they do? I read the newsletters, and I apologize if I missed it, but I only now subscribe to where my kids are. So I don't know if they.
Yeah. So I saw it in the 2 schools that my kids are at. And I try to subscribe to a few others. I don't know if I saw it in the WA one, but that's the one I went back and double checked, and I didn't verify the other ones, but I did see it in several of them. And Nina put it in the Wednesday Blackboard for anyone who reads that.
Sally, you're shaking your head. I don't think I saw it in WAs either, which is a shame because there's registered voter students as well. They probably don't read the newsletter, but I do think that in that particular newsletter might be one that a lot of parents actually read. I know I always scroll through to see what I need to know that my high schooler is not sharing with me. So, that would be a good one. I don't know.
No, these are like, I appreciate the like kind of targeted suggestions for this second wave. So it's not just, try to do everything you did the first time again, and refresh everything. So the targeted suggestions are really helpful. Thank you.
Here's another weird school related one. And this might not be, I don't even know, but I do think it would be great to hear from our school employees, because so many of them live in Westford and I don't often see them at town meeting. I don't know how, I mean, they're not all union members, and that's kind of a weird thing to include in a union communication anyway, but I don't know if anyone has any creative ideas of how to reach them.
I wonder if one of them if I could get somebody to share it in their Facebook group. Maybe. I'll think about that one.
The individual principals or the business offices of the schools would have a distribution list of their own employees, wouldn't they?
Yes. But yes, they would, for sure.
And is that inappropriate to ask?
I don't know, to say, could you send this out with they'd have to put some sort of header that obviously, it's meant for Westford registered voters. I mean, I don't know what percentage of our staff actually lives in Westford. but it's a lot. It's a fair amount.
Okay. So Valerie, how can we help? How can we help? Sorry, Christina. I don't know if your hand is raised, but how can we help? We're all rattling off. We could do, we might do, we could do. How can this team help?
Well, I can send kind of refresh the email with the blurb and include the flyer PDF attachment and send it to our committee to start with so that everybody can filter that blurb in their own words or whatever into their personal networks. And then these other kind of specific action items, I think I probably can split up between our working group members and see how far we get.
Okay, feel free to reach out, to all of us, all of us, I think, as we split up the work, it might be easier. Christina?
My only addition, when you send to WA for Jim Antonelli to include in his Friday email, I wonder if you added Bob Ware, who's the class of 2022, the seniors this year. That's their dean. And he might be able to get it to the seniors. And the reason I'm saying seniors is because those are the kids who are potentially 18. Right. Like I know I have 2 in my house, right? And so they have ways of emailing the kids directly if they're not seeing the Friday email from Jim.
And if you didn't include it in the parent email, I would email Hillary Lankel. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but she's Jim's secretary.
Oh,
but she's the one that actually puts together the newsletters. He doesn't actually do the sending out. Like he includes what he needs to be included. But I just had this conversation with him because I asked him to change something in it that was not in compliance with a school thing. Anyway, so I know because he responded to me and said, like, I cut and paste that from different sections, but Hillary's actually the one that puts it together. So she would be a good person to ask, could you just perhaps include it in the next one that goes out?
And that is positive experience has been from the league. My experience, Jim will say yes, and he passes it on to Hillary, and more than willing, as long as it's within the window that they could do it for the weekly, right? More than willing to do it, which is great. Oh, any other comments? Angela.
I just had one other thought. There is an Asian voters group. I know who has the information about that. It's Tom Clay. Maybe I could get that information and that's what they do, is inform people of issues, inform people in the Asian community of issues. So I'll see if I can get a contact for that, and maybe we can send something out.
Yeah, I mean, when I send you a fresh blurb in the flyer, that could be something that you forward to.
Yep.
Specifically follow that thread. Yeah. Thank you.
I would also think the Miller School principal would be closer to that, in addition to Tom, right? And I'm not sure what kind of outreach they do within that community. Okay. Any other comments?
If anyone thinks of something, after this meeting, feel free to ping me. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Great stuff. Clearly, my timing on this in the agenda was way off, so we'll continue here. Angela, any update on voting tabulation clickers?
Yeah, I have lots of information on clickers, which now seems like it might be irrelevant if we end up going to a meeting where we're not going to be taking any votes. However, we'll continue with this. So there were, I'll try to keep it short. There were 3 companies that provide handheld electronic voting devices that I could find. And the one that we used previously was, it's called OTI. And boy, are they mad at us. I contacted them and said, I'd like to try and find out some information. And the guy called me back and he said, well, funny to hear from you. And I'm like, excuse me. I guess they're really kind of mad that the last time we tried to do this, they went to all this time and effort and trouble. And I guess they actually came here. I didn't know that, and did a demonstration at the senior center, and then sent the clickers for us to use at town meeting. And he said, and then there was a terrible article about us in the newspaper, and we're still kind of reeling from that. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe you don't want to deal with this anymore. He said, oh, no, I'm not saying that. It's like the weirdest conversation. Anyway, so I have to tell you, I'm not very impressed after being treated like that by him, whether we didn't like it the first time or not. I don't think he should have acted that way. But anyway, he was also a little, he didn't really seem to know his stuff that well, frankly, compared to the other two people that I talked to. You know, they're all sort of the same on what they'll supply. It's a 5-button clicker. It's a self-contained system. It doesn't use the internet, so nobody can hack into it. Unless they're in the room and they have done a ton of work. They all said the same thing. It would take somebody 6 months to figure out how to do it, and thousands of dollars. It's not like somebody could sit in the room, play with the clicker and figure out a way to get in. They all seem the same on that in saying that because it's a self-contained system, it's really pretty safe. The cost for, if you buy them, is probably between $10,000 and $25,000, and that depends on how many we get. That's for between 300 and 450 clickers, and they last about 12 years. And again, they're all sort of on the same. I mean, the prices were different. 25 was the high, 10 was the low. 10 was really for 300 as opposed to 450, and they all supply training, and they all, well, the OTI guy wasn't coming here, that's for sure. Yeah, so OTI has provided their system to, I think, around 7 or 8 towns in Massachusetts. You can also rent them. If you rent them, it's going to cost between $1,000 and $3,000 per rental. So that's what makes, if you're thinking you're going to use this on a permanent basis, the purchase is obviously the way to go, because if you rent them, you'll be paying as much as the purchase in much less time than they last. Yeah, OTI only told me about the town of Ipswich, in which, besides complaining about us, he said that they tried to do it in the town of Ipswich and it failed there for some reason. I don't know. Okay. The one that I liked was Meridia. This guy was really, he spent a lot of time with me. He's available to provide an online demo for as many people as we want to have. They'll come up and do a preview for us. They come up at the first meeting so that they're here to explain and put it, you know, answer any questions that anybody has. They have about 18 towns in Massachusetts that do it. I'd say that probably the closest one demographically to us might be Westford. They also do it in Stowe, Sterling, Uxbridge, Bolton. Those are the ones that are close to us. Sturbridge, lots of different towns. He sent me the whole list of towns that they do and said he had all the town clerk names if I wanted to contact them. That's pretty easy to get anyway. It doesn't require, but they recommend a dedicated computer for it. So, which is another safety thing, so that you're not using a computer that anything else is coming into, but their information. The third place was Paget. They were very nice. The guy was very knowledgeable, but they have not done this much at all. They're sort of new to this. They're in the education and corporate field. And they're only just getting involved in elections and tallying at town meetings. So to me, that seemed like a big negative for them. So my next step would be, unless it seems like we're not going to do this, but I would go to this next step anyway, to arrange some meetings with them, demos and stuff. And I was hoping Tom or Steve or Eric, that one or more of you could do that with me, because I feel like I think it's appropriate for you guys to be involved in it. And I feel like I'd like somebody there who's more on the technology side than I am. I'd probably ask Mike Wells as well. So if you guys are willing to do that, then I'll try to coordinate those meetings with us all, so we can do that. And that's where I am.
Cool. Questions? Tom?
Yeah, Angela, one of the things you said was that Meridia will be at that first meeting.
Yes.
And I think that was a major downfall when the last company didn't show up. There were so many questions that Susan was unable to answer, and it just lost interest.
Yeah.
So Tom, he was not able to be there.
They don't go. They don't. OTI does not go to.
They were going to go. They were booked in another community. That was the challenge at the time.
Okay.
He made it pretty specific with me that they're not going to go. They're not.
Oh, maybe that changed. Maybe
they're in Florida. They're in Florida, so it's a big thing for them to come.
Where is Meridia?
Pennsylvania, but that is part of their regular process to go to the first meeting.
Okay.
I think that's important. I mean, they can answer all the technical questions that the residents have.
Right. I think we all agree. Any other questions for now from Angela? So Angela, you'll pull in,
Yeah, I'm at least going to go to the next step and have the demos, set up the demos and do that. And then I can see where we're heading with this. I mean, I don't see it as we can, again, if this committee decides to recommend that we go to a completely different type of meeting where we're not going to be taking votes, then obviously this is no longer relevant. But I'll just keep going until we get to a point where we have to make a decision, where I have to make a decision, or you guys have to make a decision one way or the other.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. Thank you. So
I think Steve has his hand up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Steve.
Well, so just to the potential of going to like a ballot election type town meeting. One of the things that would be involved in that is that the meeting would still be able to present resolutions or amendments to articles. So there might still be some use for voting at the meetings. So I wouldn't say that if we go in that direction, that would necessarily throw things out entirely. But I also would be interested in helping out with that if you need me to lend my technical expertise.
Okay, and you're reminding me of something else, that the Meridia product actually also takes care of amendments if they happen on the floor. It posts the amendments immediately, and so they're visible. They're visible on the screen and they're visible on the handheld items as well. Sounded pretty good.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Second to the last item would be update to the select board. So we talked about providing a progress update. And I think it was during the last meeting, we threw out February. So I'm suggesting February 22nd. See, it's either the first Tuesday or the fourth Tuesday of the month, February 22nd. And that will probably be given 10, 15 minutes at the most, knowing that we're in the middle of the budget cycle right now, and there's a lot going on, but it would just be an update as to reintroducing or validating the charter, the members, how long we've been meeting. At a high level, the working groups, there'd be a PowerPoint, with big print that we could all read, and just letting the select board as well as the community know what's going on behind the scenes. So it would be more visibility, which would be great, with the call to action of getting involved, and this is your community and other things. The question that I know it's going to be asked by select board is, when are you planning to come back with the recommendations? So we talked high level about this, but we never really settled on a date. And that's going to be, I think, one of the questions that will come up. So when you plan to come back with the recommendations? And I wanted to get input from the team, regarding that. Angela.
Before you, is that school vacation week? The 22nd? I guess I would suggest you don't do it on school vacation week, because part of what you're trying to do is get that information out there to the public. And I know I guess not as many people are away, but I don't know. Do people think that matters? I never like to do things during school vacation because
that didn't even occur. Obviously, that didn't even occur to me or anybody else. So I'll float that with people and see what they think. Valerie.
I guess I sort of doubt that we would get attendance at a Tuesday meeting to sort of distribute our message. Like I wouldn't, to me, that meeting is our update to select board, not like our public service announcement. So I think it's sort of fine that the people who are normally watching those meetings that probably are still watching them. Just my thought.
Anybody else? Dana, any thoughts? You're one of many that has young kids.
I have no plans over February vacation, so it doesn't really affect me.
Megan?
I'm fine with it.
I will be in St. John for February vacation. So.
Right.
Hopefully, knock on wood, COVID test permitting.
That's right. Okay, so does February 22nd sound reasonable to everybody? And again, it's just, this is where we're at. This is our charter and this is the plan, but we're still back to the questions going to be asked. When will you be coming back making the recommendations? So thoughts, Sally?
I think we talked about once making rolling recommendations, like where things like the clickers, we could come behind right away with the recommendation to support. Whereas something like, maybe going to something online, as Tom was saying, might take quite some time to make that recommendation. So are we talking about some kind of rolling time frame for recommendations?
I know we had used the word, rolling it at some point. In my mind, we at least need a first pass. We can have others after that, but we would, I think, need to have, or should be, going to select board at some point in the near future, right? Saying these are 10 recommendations, and we could even I can even categorize them long-term versus short-term, but there should be a first pass, regarding all the work we've done over the past 6 months. Valerie?
Valerie, you're muted.
You're muted.
Yep. Thank you. I was going to ask Christina sort of what the context is for the FinCom booklet printing, as like mentally when things start kicking into gear for June town meeting, because I would think that, like, based on this our survey, the working group that I'm part of survey, and I mean, at least from that, the data we're seeing and the write-ins and the ideas that we're sort of discussing, I can imagine having at least some sort of minor, operational suggestions in, by sort of like April in time. And I'm wondering if that's enough time for sort of any June preparations. So one thing I was just trying to think of is that has like a set timeline is the FinCom book.
So the Finance Committee budget hearings will start March 3rd and pretty much go almost every Thursday for the next, 4 or 5 weeks. There's 1 week where we don't meet. I think it goes through like the beginning of April. And then there's probably one more meeting or so after that at some point. Let me see if I can find my schedule to go over the warrant articles.
So things seem to solidify by mid-April.
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would hope, I guess, from at least the survey that I'm a part of point of view, that we could have some, nothing probably earth shattering, but little tweaks to our communication and to our, resident education that we could sort of report and share by, beginning of April. I don't know. Maybe you're all looking, maybe I'm way off base.
No, I agree. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was looking off because I was looking at my schedule. So it actually looks like April 7th is our last budget hearing, but then we actually don't look at the warrant articles until, and let me just double check this because that seems a little weird to me. We have a meeting Thursday, May 5th to review warrant articles. So the warrant articles do sort of extend a little past that. I agree that I think maybe we should try to come up with some things by the end of March or beginning of April if we can, because I guarantee some of our recommendations are going to be communication based. And it would be nice to try some of these things out, even if they're just sort of basic, easy, quote unquote, easy, simple things to try to get the word out for this June town meeting. Because if we don't, yes, you've got special town meeting in October, but really that's not as big of a draw by any means as the annual town meeting is, as much as either one of them is a draw. So you're almost looking at waiting another year to sort of test anything out. So I would say we push for even if it's just communication, because I think communication is a big thing. The information, I mean, even for me, the information is scattered throughout so many meetings and in different pockets. It's never together. I have a difficult enough time keeping track of everything with the budget and the warrant article. So if I have trouble doing that, the average citizen does as well. So that'd be my input.
Anybody else? Angela, are you raising? No.
I'll talk though. It seems like there are a couple of things. I don't know if we're not really working on these, but that's because we're getting the general information, but stuff like transportation, which it's already sort of in the works with Bob Rafferty from the senior center. We've been talking to him, but that, we could recommend that be something the town continue to expand. If we're going to ask the rec department to not have in-town games that day, we should be thinking about that and whether that's an ask we want to have. I don't know that we can put childcare together that fast, but.
Well, with this, Angela, I want to differentiate. Our charter is to make recommendations, not necessarily to implement. That's a whole other discussion, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. But if we just go in there and say the town should provide additional transportation for people to town meeting, it won't happen. I think the recommendation has to be more specific than that. I think we have to have looked into it, made sure it can happen so that we can say, We've talked to Bob Rafferty at the senior center. This is something they're absolutely capable of. They can put it online so people can sign up easily. We recommend that this be done.
Mm-hmm.
But
No,
I think
would
you have to
agree.
have a pretty specific proposal. Otherwise, we're just spitting in the wind.
Okay. No, I would agree with that comment. But there are other things that's not quite clear who or what organization would do it. That is a specific one that I definitely agree with. That it would be within senior center in their transportation and Bob jurisdiction. But there are other things that gets a little kludgy as far as implementation and who would be responsible for implementing it.
Right.
That we would need to talk through.
Right. Agree.
Okay. So are we saying mid-April? What am I hearing? As just a goal in our head that we could match. Tom, sorry, I didn't see you.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to ask Angela what the possibility was to do all the demos and the training and use a clicker at the June meeting. I'm so interested in that because I think that changes people's mindset about what the future holds for electronics.
Yeah. I think we could have a vote on it at town meeting. I don't think we can implement the whole thing at June. Like, I think we could do public education, get everybody on as much on board as we can if it seems like this is what we want to do, and then have the discussion and vote at town meeting. I don't think having the vote on it and using them at the same meeting, I think we've already had a negative experience with that. So we should probably stay away from that and not make it feel like it's being imposed on people right then and there. That their vote is really what's going to make it either happen or not happen.
But we could be ready to discuss it at town meeting.
I think we could. Yeah, I think we could.
I don't remember now. Angela, someone else can refresh my memory. Did we actually do a town meeting vote to move forward with the clickers the last time around, or was it a simple recommendation from Jody?
Well, no, it was a resolution because you don't need a vote, because as the moderator explained, it's really up to the moderator as to whether or not you use these or not. The moderator can impose them on town meeting if he or she wishes, because the moderator is in charge of the way people vote. But that, to me, I'm not going to do that. That is not the right way to do it.
Yeah.
And I think we could have town meeting vote on it and make a decision. I would personally not impose it on a town meeting that said they didn't think it was the right way to vote.
I couldn't recall what the process was.
Yes, we voted with the clickers to decide whether or not we were going to vote with clickers in the future, and then we voted with the clickers not to vote with clickers in the future. That's what happened.
Okay. Tom, you have more?
No, I was just going to say we could at least make that recommendation in whatever the April date was, that we bring it up at town meeting for discussion. That would be the recommendation. I'm not putting words in your mouth, Angela, but.
No, remember we were looking into this. We haven't made a decision yet.
Right.
Stephanie, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, from my recollection on the previous time the clickers were brought forward, it was more of it was imposed on the voters as opposed to an open discussion. And I think that's why, at least in my mind, that's why I had an issue with it. So I agree with Angela. I think it needs to be discussed and presented and then voted on. So.
Okay. Sounds reasonable. Anybody else? Sally.
Can we decide on one of our upcoming meetings to be the meeting where we decide what we're going to recommend? Can we just set that in our agenda?
Yeah.
I think the timetable everyone's talking about is achievable. I'm on board is what I'm saying. You know, I think if we set it up as a main topic of an upcoming meeting, that might help us be ready for that conversation.
So I heard April, am I hearing April window for doing this? And that would mean putting a recommendation together to present to select board. Is that what I'm hearing?
If I'm tracking these every other Tuesday things out correctly, I think select board is probably scheduled to meet like the 5th and the 19th of April. So then maybe our recommendations are better like at the very end of March. Maybe we could try to aim for like that last week of March or something. Just to give, I don't want to push our meeting to select board too much into April. That would cut out any time we need for implementation.
Mm-hmm. So Valerie, you're suggesting
I'm suggesting that we meet at the end of March to and whether that's a sort of bonus additional meeting for that month or whether it's our standing meeting for March. But I think that the end of March, that last week, is probably a good time frame
for this committee to meet and put together, or at least decide on that, and then present to select board the 5th or the 19th of April. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think the 5th gives us more time. Yeah.
How does that sit with what we know? Is it achievable?
I mean, I think whatever is achievable by then will be a naturally fulfilling prophecy.
That's what I was going to say too. Whatever we're comfortable with at that point is what we recommend at that point.
Right.
Okay.
And, you know, certainly some of that presentation can be, these are things in progress or longer term, but whatever we have by then, that seems like a good timeline.
Okay. Any other input on that? So it sounds reasonable, sounds doable. At this point, we'll give another push for the survey. And we have some actions to do there. And plan on the 5th of April for that. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Last but not least, our next meeting will be in February 15th. Any other comments anybody else wants to make?
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, who's going to take the minutes?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Who's taking the minutes at that meeting?
I don't think I heard.
Oh,
She's asking
who's taking minutes at the February 15th meeting?
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you, minute taker, for this time around. So we're rotating. Do I have any volunteers? Or am I going to end up assigning someone or asking someone?
I'm going to be late to that meeting. It's the junior college info night. I think that just affects me of everyone. So I'm due to take notes, but don't pick me that night because I will be late.
Okay.
I'll take them.
Okay, thank you.
My turn.
Okay. Okay, so Linda will take notes and minutes for the next meeting.
I think we need a second.
Valerie's motion to adjourn.
Yeah, Diane, did you say February 15th? That's a Tuesday, you know.
So tonight's meeting, yes, tonight's meeting was changed from our
That's
usual
right.
Tuesday schedule. So we've been going with the flow based on the discussions,
Okay.
right? And what everybody agrees to.
Oh, wait a minute. I won't be here for that meeting.
Okay,
Sorry, I've got Kiwanis meetings on the 1st and the 3rd Tuesdays of the month.
okay, that's fair. I mean, we're not always going to be able to attend every meeting. So,
Yep.
That's fair. We'll get the minutes together and we'll float them and you'll obviously hear
Okay.
what's going to happen from there. Any other questions? Did we get a second to adjourn? We already got a second, right? Okay, all in favor?
Hold on. Who motioned? Who
Valerie motioned,
Okay. And who
Megan
seconded?
seconded.
Okay, sorry. Yep.
That's okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
I
Okay, good night, everybody. Thank you.
Night.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.